He's got that, like, androgyny going on that I
Yeah.
really loved in
There's
my
a
male elves.
little bit of flamboyance happening there, and
Also, he was a dick. I really
oh
loved
yeah.
the dicks.
All right. Well, let's get this thing started. For the first time ever on the podcast, Ariel is mic'd.
Hello there. Get ready for the thunder.
So we actually, you guys have seen him before with the podcast that I've been doing with Carlos, but
They need some of that coffee.
I really did.
You just don't want it to get cold today.
Yeah. But this is the first time that we've used him where Ariel has been on him, and this is the first time that I've used him that I have headphones on, and it's both great and weird at the same time. I gotta get used to this. Hearing myself, like, in there.
Did you just, like, pull it off in one ear?
Yeah.
Oh, I like being able to just hear it in there.
Really?
It doesn't bother me. It took a second to get used to.
Maybe I'll just... Alright, fine. We're still learning, people. We're still learning.
Hello there.
Alright, so today, I feel like we're doing this backwards.
Why are we... What?
So, like, not backwards, but, like, switched. So, like, Carlos and I could talk, like, in depth about characters, right? But, like, it's kind of fun to do the history one with you. But somehow I got on the rhythm of doing the exact opposite. And I've been doing all the history ones with Carlos and all of the character ones with you.
Well, okay, but to be fair, the characters that you're choosing are ones that I'm choosing.
Right.
Because I'm the one that was interested in them in the first place.
Right.
Galadriel had a big history. Legolas, not so much.
That's true.
Spoiler alert, we're talking about Legolas today.
Spoiler alert, Legolas. And his history isn't that big.
So we're going to make it up.
Oh, are we?
No, maybe.
So anyway, I know that you don't actually listen to the ones that Carlos and I do. So kind of the way that things are going. How's your fitness going?
How is my fitness going?
Yeah, how's your fitness going?
I could do it more often.
Okay.
That's genuinely how I feel about it.
I could do it more often.
I just hate going to the gym because of a certain someone.
Who also doesn't listen, so it's fine.
I know.
Oh, okay. Well, that's funny. All right. Good times.
That's fine. I'll get my shit together eventually. I'll fitness again.
Yeah. I mean, we're both...
I do fitness. I just don't fitness as often as I used to.
We're both signed up for the Open. The CrossFit Open.
Did you actually sign me up?
I didn't sign you up, but I bought your sign up, so
I know.
you're signed up.
I got an email.
Oh, did you?
Well, I think it was just to register.
Oh, gotcha.
I
was like, I didn't put your name in it, so I don't know. I don't know how you got an email. Magic Mind email.
They can do that.
Yeah, so we're both so we're both registered for the CrossFit Open. That starts March 10th.
I don't know. I think I'm most sad because I feel like this is the year when I could actually do everything except for muscle ups. Like RX didn't do it pretty well.
Yeah.
Because I did an RX last year, but it was... I got through one round most of the time. There was only like one that I thought I wasn't going to do very well at that I did pretty good at.
Was that the toes to bar one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because you actually did really well on that one.
Yeah. Because that was toes to bar and double unders, and I did not have those at that point.
Yeah, and you went single, double, single, double, single, double. Oh, man.
I was very upset.
The whole time.
Very upset. And this year I have double unders, and I have toes to bar, and I have handstand push-ups, and I'm way stronger.
Yeah.
I can't really do handstand walks, but I can go like 3 feet.
Yeah.
If I move my hands really fast, and they go further than my legs.
It's just falling quickly.
Yeah, I'm really good at falling quickly.
Yeah. So what's the problem? It sounded like there was a problem there because you said you were like bummed about that.
I mean, maybe I'm not bummed about it because the fact that there's not going to be a rig movement means that, well, rig or rings means that I might actually be a total badass this year.
Oh, so you're just saying because there's that chance of muscle ups that like that might is what messes you up on the open.
Well, I guess I more mean that, like, I felt like this test this year, while it will still be a test, is not going to be, like, in reality comparable to past years. Like, if you're excluding at least 15 movements.
Right.
So, the caveat is that I do feel like I'll do really well this year, but it's because I'm not doing all the movements I'm weak on.
Yeah.
So, test-wise, I'll do better than I have in the past years, but for me, it won't necessarily feel like it's just because I got better. It'll feel like it's also because a lot of the movements that I'm not good at are not included.
Yeah. That you would like to fitness more.
I would just like to fitness regularly. It could be 3 days a week.
Yeah.
That's chill. But as long as it was regular. I just have sucked at having a routine this semester in school because everything keeps on changing.
Ariel forced me into a routine, but it was because I asked her to. Well, not asked her to. I wanted to. And so she paid $100 for me to be in a routine.
I'm very romantic.
I know, right?
Very romantic.
That was my Valentine's Day gift.
I didn't get him anything. And then on Valentine's Day, he was telling me that he wanted this. And I said, okay, will you do it? And he's like, I don't know.
I sound exactly like that, by the way.
He does.
I know.
That was a very good impression.
It was.
Anyway, so I asked him if he would do it. And he said, I don't know. And then I said, okay, well then, if you do it, I'll get it for you. And then he made a weird face. And then I said, I will get it for you for Valentine's Day. And then he said, should I do it?
Just went back and forth
for
like
a long time. To which my response is literally just, I'll get it for you if you do it.
Yeah. So I started the Thunder Bros Muscle Mania. Thunder Bros is something that I've done before. It's mostly bodybuilding stuff. Last time I definitely was not consistent at all when I did this. But that's because I paid like $30 for an ebook, and that was it. So this time it's an actual 4-week challenge. I got wrecked the first 2 days in, and I'm still sore.
So is that what we need to do if you want something? You just have to give me the money and I'll buy it for you?
Probably. I think that's how it works. It's the only reason why I didn't start CrossFit in 2013. It's because I wasn't paying for it.
Oh.
Because it was right there in my garage, and I was like, I'll do it later.
Oh.
I'll do it later. And I just kept saying, I'll do it later.
Yeah, I don't know. Spending money on stuff doesn't necessarily make me even do it. I have to want to do it.
Yeah.
Or enjoy it or be competitive. Or there has to be some driving force beyond just money. Money doesn't mean a whole lot to me when it comes to doing things.
And even for me with this, like, it already, like, day one, it felt different than anything I've done before. And it's not super boring like it was the first time I did it. Because the first time I did Thunder
this time
Bros,
you've got a lot more variation with a, 17-part workout. How could you not?
Well, that was the problem, right? Is the first time I did Thunder Bros, it was all 8x8s. It was just 8x8 of everything. And it was boring. And it was like 2.5 hours of that. And now, instead, I've got, 6 to 7 parts all doing different things, with some with negatives, some not, some tempo, some not, and I just get to throw on a podcast and do that.
Yeah, but I feel like that's also like a lesson learned by the Thunder Bros, is that not that their old way couldn't get results, but it wasn't getting very good results because it was really boring, and it's hard to get somebody that has never done bodybuilding before into it if you're just doing 8x8 for 2 hours.
Right, and I feel like that's something that you have to do with like your bros, right? Because you're taking rests and it's forever long. And so if you're just sitting there by yourself with music in your ears for 2.5 hours doing 8x8s, it's the worst.
Yeah.
So if you've got like a group of guys or a group of girls that are sitting there doing it with you, and you guys have a pump session going on, awesome. But like, and you can talk in between.
Yeah.
But if it's just you on your own, it's awful.
Yeah, I've never had a pump session with some gals, but I would imagine
Nikki would be down with that.
Nikki would be down with that.
Just pump session with Nikki.
Nikki would be the first girl I've ever met that would be like so down with a pump session.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be as down for it as she would. She would want to go for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
We'd be done at like an hour. She'd be like, let's go.
It would just be banded like hammer curls and lat pulls. Just over and over and over again.
I would get very jacked though.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I heard that one.
My bad.
That's okay. So yeah, anyway, that's our fitness. With that in mind, there's also going to be some fitnessy type giveaways coming up soon. It'll all be based off of people who give me 5-star ratings on iTunes. So give me 5-star ratings on iTunes.
The twinkle in your eye.
I know, right? But I'll announce it next episode. I'll have some supplements, stuff like that I'm going to be giving away in a drawing for people who rate us on iTunes.
Don't tell me, tell them.
So rate the Swolhirrim.
You can't say your name today.
Why do I have such a hard time with that today?
The name is Swolhirrim.
You know what's nice? Is now that you're mic'd, like before you were just like this person that was in the other room. Like now that you're mic'd, it's like you're an even more just ethereal being. Like,
I am an ethereal being
like,
for everybody wondering.
You're right here, but not.
I love that.
Also, you and McGregor.
Yes. Maybe one day you guys will get to see my face.
Maybe.
Some of you probably know what I look like because you know me.
Yeah.
But if you don't and you're in Denmark.
That one listener in Denmark. Blah, 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 blah.
One day I'll let you guys see me.
Of course, I think you are on the YouTube page somewhere.
No, I'm not. Oh,
yeah,
like, not on your Swolhirrim one.
It's the same page.
Damn it. How dare you shatter my illusion?
You just have to scroll down far enough.
Stop it.
Her eyes just got really big. All right. So today we're talking about Legolas. We're doing another character profile, which again, I'm getting these mixed up, but that's fine. Because Legolas made Ariel swoon as a child and probably still does.
Yeah.
Not, to be clear, not Orlando Bloom.
Legolas.
And I think that's how a lot of people feel. Well, I don't know. A lot of people like Orlando Bloom.
I mean, Orlando Bloom was definitely my favorite of all the blonde elves. The only one, and we made this joke in the last podcast, the only one that as a child did not make me swoon that was an elf with blonde hair was Galadriel's husband. I was like, this guy is a dick.
Yeah. Celeborn is useless.
They picked the perfect man to look like a useless human, a useless elf being, whatever you want to call it. But
tell me, where is Gandalf?
Yeah, Legolas was my favorite of all the blonde-haired men elves.
Haldir was pretty great, though, too.
Who's Haldir?
He's the one that shows up. We've come to honor that agreement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A dwarf breathed so loud we could have shot you in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked him, too.
Haldir's pretty great.
I'm sure I would have gone, like, gaga for Legolas's daddy if The Hobbit was out when I was little.
Well, because he's a little... He's a little David Bowie-esque, honestly.
He's got that, like, androgyny going on that I really loved in my male elves.
A little bit of flamboyance happening there. And
also, he was a dick. I really love the dicks.
And that's the beginning of the podcast.
I just really loved it when people just didn't give a shit about anybody else. I was like, yep.
And he has his fun little berry crown that he's wearing.
Yeah, plus he rides a
elk.
Elk?
Yeah, people call it a moose. It's not a moose.
I knew it wasn't a moose. I know what a moose looks like because as exhibited by my moose rabbit that I saw yesterday.
It's a capybara.
It's a moose rabbit, guys. Look up whatever it is.
Capybara.
It's a moose rabbit. I don't know why we don't name creatures like they do in Avatar.
I know. What's the Danish word? Ooh, we have somebody from Denmark. But I think it was Danish that the word for turtle It's like Shield Toad.
Yeah, way better.
It's so great.
Way better to name things just based off of what they are and how they look.
Shield Toad. But talking about Thranduil, I have a really hard time remembering his name, so I wrote it down. I don't know why Legolas's dad's name of all the elves I have the hardest time with. I think it.
Wait, was that his name? Is Thranduil?
Yeah, Thranduil.
Thranduil.
Yeah, it's a weird name. But we kind of need to start with him if we're talking about Legolas, because Legolas is his history is not a whole lot, right? We don't have a whole lot from him. We've got a lot in the Lord of the Rings, but at that point he's, I don't know, probably 1,000 years old. We don't know really when he was
he's had
born.
muscle atrophy at that point.
Yeah.
I was really excited for bigger Legolas.
In The Hobbit?
In The Hobbit.
Yeah, he's jacked in that.
Yeah, he's jacked.
I don't know why he lost his jawline in Lord of the Rings, but,
Did he?
Well,
oh, no. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because, like, in The Hobbit, he's got, like, this nice square jaw. And in Lord of the Rings, he's all, like... And I get it. He was younger in Lord of the Rings, but I'm just saying it's kind of funny.
Well, it also is probably because he is more muscular. Like, the more muscular you are, the more testosterone you have, the more muscle attachments you also have in your face, the bigger your jaw looks.
Or just be Círdan and be an elf who learns how to grow a beard. And then you can create your own jawline.
What?
Círdan's the only elf that has a beard.
Who the hell's Círdan?
We've talked about him before. Even you shaft Círdan. Poor Círdan that's always getting shafted.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Círdan the shipwright. He's the one that, like, they just completely ignored in the movies, and I've talked about him before, that he was actually a pretty important elf. He stuck around for the entirety of Middle-earth.
I don't think you've ever distinguished him as having his own beard.
Oh, no, I haven't. I mean, we didn't...
How would I know that?
We did in one of the podcasts, but, like, we haven't together. But yeah, he had a beard. He was the only person mentioned, or only elf mentioned to have a beard.
That's because he was so unique.
Yeah. Círdan the shipwright. Shafted.
That just reminds me of something else, but I'm not going to bring it up because it's not relevant to your podcast.
All right. Well, most of the things that we talk about on here aren't relevant to this podcast. So Thranduil was actually one of the elves that lived in Doriath. So Doriath was the kingdom that we talked about. That was Melian and Thingol.
We're talking about his dad, right?
Thranduil is Legolas's dad.
Okay.
So he was a part of the kingdom that Melian and Thingol were king and queen of. So Melian and Thingol are the dad of Luthien. We've talked about them before.
I remember Luthien. I can never remember people's parents' names.
So Melian is the Maya that married the elf.
Sure.
So they were a part of the kingdom of Doriath. We know, except for the tiny bit that we get from the movies, which you can call it canon, you can call it not. People seem to hate any of the new stuff that they get from the movies, but whatever. We know nothing about Legolas's mom. We don't know who it is. We don't know her name. We don't know anything about her.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that she was a Sylvan elf as well. She could have been something else. But basically what happened is they were living in Doriath, and Legolas's grandfather, Thranduil's dad, his name was Orifer, and he was granted, like, lordship over Greenwood, which then became Mirkwood. So that's where they became, like, the Green Elves or the Wood Elves. It wasn't until then that they became that. I'm going to put that right there so it doesn't look like I'm looking straight down. Everybody here knows that I make lists, so it doesn't matter that I'm looking at it, but, it's fine. So Orifer basically, like, asked Thingol to have lordship over a separate part of the kingdom. So he and Thranduil, his son, go off and create this separate kingdom in Greenwood. And while they're there, other elves from that, like, are just barely making their way over kind of join in with them in Greenwood. All of these elves are part of the Sindar, which are the elves that stayed behind. None of them went to Valinor.
Okay.
So they were all a part of the elves that, like the sundering, the many sundering of elves that we talked about 2-3 episodes ago. Not we, Carlos and I.
Okay.
We talked about that and how like the elves were awakened in one spot, right? And then there were some elves that didn't want to leave that, but everybody else left. And then there was another like break off and another break off and another break off. And then finally a bunch of elves made it over to Valinor, but a lot of them stayed behind as well. So of these that stayed behind, Orifer was definitely one of them, and he got to be. Eventually, he called himself a king, but really he was just like a lord over that area because Thingol was the king. Thingol was the king of all Beleriand.
Thingol is
Luthien's dad.
Luthien's dad.
Yeah. So
and
he was.
Orifer is Legolas's daddy's dad.
Yeah, Legolas's grandpa.
Okay.
So
And he self-appointed himself as a king, even though he wasn't.
Eventually.
Okay.
So once they got over there, it wasn't much longer after they got there that Thingol died. And so they kind of created their own little kingdom of Greenwood. They were like, this is ours. This is who we are. I'm the king here. Orifer was saying that basically. But then they went off and they went to help with the Battle of the Last Alliance. So the Battle of the Last Alliance is the one where Sauron gets his finger cut off, the ring, all of that fun stuff, right? So Orifer and Thranduil, Thranduil, God,
Thranduil.
it's a weird, Thranduil, Dwil,
Thdwiel.
No, Thranduil.
What?
Thranduil.
Thranduil.
I have a hard time with his name. It's the only one that like really gives me grief. Anyway, Orifer and Thranduil go to the War of the Last Alliance with like most of their men. They send almost their entirety of their army.
Something just occurred to me.
What up?
Do female elves not become warriors?
No, they do.
Why do they take most of their men?
I don't know.
I mean, they honestly don't look that different, so it's hard to tell.
Well, and that's the thing is like, yeah, that's the extended version of The Hobbit shows us that.
Does it?
Because Killy is talking about the elves when they're all there, and he's like, "That one's not bad," and the other guy's like, "I don't think that's an elf maid," and it's a guy.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, but what was I saying? Oh, so I think also he uses, because it's Tolkien and when it was, is he uses men like interchangeably. So it's not like, especially with
like
elves,
you mean like
mankind
okay.
type of thing. Like especially with elves, there's plenty of like what would it be called? Source material that there were female like warrior elves. I mean Galadriel, we talked about that. About her more than likely fighting in Aqualande.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Galadriel as a warrior?
Yeah, but like in like
armor?
armored getup?
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Oh my god, like Kate Blanchett. Do it, please.
Please do it.
I think my heart would stop.
So, you know, I don't know if it was just the elf men that went. My guess is it was warriors of all kind, right? And we see, again, it's the movie, but whatever. We see that, you know, in the movie, the captain of the guard is Tariel.
Tariel.
There we go. Like, what is it? We see Tariel as the captain of the guard, right? So, like, there's obviously, warrior women.
Right, but that was the only one that I could even think of that you see. Because even all of, like, her...
It's all dudes.
Yeah, it's all men.
They're all pretty, though, so who knows?
I guess, yes.
But yeah, so anyway, they send off almost, like, they send their entire army. Whoever's, like, army goes, okay? And 2/3 of them die. So a huge amount of their people die in the War of the Last Alliance, including Orifer, which kind of brings in the, like, seclusionism of Thranduil. Thranduil. There we go. I'm going to get this. All right. So kind of, like, brings in the seclusion of him. Now, the first time we're ever introduced to him is in the book The Hobbit. But we don't get his name. He's just king of the woodland elves. Like, that's it.
Okay.
So he doesn't really have that much of a character in it. Talks a little bit about him. He is a little bit more haughty, right? Like we see in the movies now.
When you say haughty, you mean like he's like hot-headed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he, like...
I didn't know he were like trying to verbalize like
sexy?
Yeah, like because there's shouty.
He's a little more sexy.
He's howdy.
But then when we realize who he is in Lord of the Rings, because the Lord of the Rings, when Legolas comes, they say Legolas, son of Thranduil, king of Mirkwood.
Ooh. Is that in the book or is that just in the movie?
It's in the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's how we know the connection there. Because otherwise it never really talks about it. Because in The Hobbit, even though obviously we know this and we talked, Carlos and I talked about this when we were talking about the movie, Legolas was there, right? He would have been there in this entire world that was created. He would have been there, even though he wasn't mentioned. So that's why it's okay that he's in the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So Legolas was born in, or at least we think that Legolas was born in Greenwood. He wasn't one of the elves from Doriath. He was born later on, after they already left and made their home in Greenwood.
Okay.
We hear through the movie that Legolas's mom died in a battle. So my guess is she died in the War of the Last Alliance.
I mean, you would know better than I. I feel like based off of what happens later in the movie, which again is maybe non-canonical. Learned that word from Bob's Burgers.
It's non-canonical.
Like my impression that I got was that he maybe lost her to a dragon.
The whole do not mention dragon fire to me or whatever.
Like I know of the dragon's fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, but
which like could have been an entirely different battle, but
right.
But like for him to have such detest, I don't know, maybe not, because he also was saying later on to what's his name that he warned his grandfather of the like what would happen if he kept on acquiring all the gold.
Right.
As that he would attract a dragon, and he didn't listen to him.
Yeah, and like that's hard with the movie. Like that whole part of it is tough with the movie because like when you're looking back through the canon, like most of the dragons were gone at that point.
We're gone at what point?
At the point that they would have left Doriath. Like,
how do you know that the dragons were gone?
Because most of the dragons were destroyed during the Dagor Bragalock.
None of those words are similar.
One of the wars, the war where Melkor actually like fell and was pushed out into outer darkness by the Valar. Spoiler alert, we haven't gotten there on history yet. But that's when the dragons, most of the dragons were defeated at that point. Now, there were still
Were the dragons of him?
Yeah, they're Melkor's creations.
Oh, that makes me disappointed.
Why?
I just feel like dragons are like T-Rexes and that they're misunderstood creatures and they just shouldn't always be bad.
No, these dragons are bad. They're just bad. I mean, Smaug.
I know, but what I'm saying is just that I feel like they're always made out to be bad creatures, and that's why people kill them.
Mm,
It's like how T-Rexes are always the bad guy in movies. Like, they're the only ones that don't talk.
right.
I'm like, they just gotta eat, guys.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, in this mythology, they're just bad. They're evil, and they can talk and mess with your mind and stuff like that.
Right, but I think that also I don't like that because, like, all of the other creatures that, what's his name made?
Melkor.
Melkor.
Mm-hmm.
They were not... Which, like, I get it. Tolkien is doing a mythology for his land, which believes in dragons. So,
Right.
to explain dragons, you need to have dragons at some point. And how do you explain them except for to have them be the bad guy's creation?
Right.
And that's why you guys killed him. But all of his other created creatures,
Mm-hmm.
were not things that were already in mythology. Does that make sense?
Like orcs.
Yeah, like orcs, the Belrog,
Trolls existed, but
yeah, but like these are things that like weren't already created.
there's something new to the mythology.
Yeah, so I don't really care about them. They can all
Right.
die. They can all be bad.
Right.
But dragons I love.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's the idea of like Game of Thrones kind of did dragons right?
Yeah.
But they were also
That's not to say that they aren't feared by people because they can kill masses with like one sneeze.
right.
But
One sneeze. Don't want to be around a dragon with a cold.
oh, that'd be a cute kid's book. Nobody take this. Patent. TM. I don't know. Copyright.
TM. Did you just trademark that?
Yes, I did. Anyways, it's not to say that like they wouldn't obviously be feared because they're misunderstood creatures,
Right.
but is to say that they're always cast as bad characters
Just like
on
sharks.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Game of Thrones, like, if you want that, like, sort of things, Game of Thrones did it right? They were these dragons that, like, you can, it wasn't, like, as far as, like, How to Train Your Dragon, which is dragons are good, right? And they're your pet, but it's, like, closer to that. I think the difference is that in, like, the Tolkien Legendarium, not only are, like, dragons evil creations of Melkor, they're also sentient. So, like, most of them can talk, either, like, actually verbally talk, or they can, like, speak into your mind. Like, Glaurung was telekinetic, basically. Or
Yeah, that's right. Telekinesis is moving objects.
Yeah, he can't move, though. He's
Telekine-
telepathic. Telepathic is speaking mind to mind. Telekinetic is moving things with your mind.
Whatever.
So he was telepathic, basically. And anyway, so, like, they're a little bit more like sentient creatures, and they're evil ones is really what it comes down to.
I get it. Dragon sickness and all that crap.
Right. Where were we at? Oh, we were talking about his mom dying. So I mean, yes, I get what you were saying with it, like that, especially like because he has so much passion when he says that, do not speak to me of the dragon.
Which I get it. You could just be pissed that half your face got blown off.
Right. Which that whole thing, I don't understand what he's doing there. But, elf magic, I guess.
Yeah, the question is, was that an illusion or his face's illusion?
Yeah, right?
And he was just, because, like, I would love the idea if he was just playing, like, tricks on somebody else's mind to show them what it was. Like,
Right.
his face is fine now.
I actually like that. That's not a bad, like, thought process on that. Because
I
obviously...
fully believe that an elf could heal from that.
Yeah.
And not disguise it, but instead show them what happened to them through, like, trickery of the mind.
Yeah, I like that.
You're welcome.
That's good. I like that better than him, like, taking off the illusion and showing that his fucking face is missing.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like way more work also.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. But anyway, like, I do think that it's possible that Fandriel was a part of Thranduil, was a part of those, like, battles with the dragons and everything. But I think, because I feel like Legolas actually talks about her being killed near, like, Angband. Or I don't know. Anyway, I think that she was a warrior and got killed in battle.
Yeah, that's the impression I got. I don't remember the line specifically. I just know that he said, like, he doesn't speak of her.
Yeah.
I just know that she died at Ba-na-na-na-na.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that I can't remember.
Yeah. But so she was dead. We know nothing of her except for what we get in the movies. And I'm okay with those little bits in the movies. At least it's something, right? But now we're finally moving into Legolas.
Hello there.
This is not talked about in the movie at all. He is only there. The only reason why Legolas shows up in Rivendell, the only reason why he's a part of the company, is because in the books, Aragorn and Gandalf actually caught up to Gollum. So we know that a little bit because it talks about it in the movie a little bit.
Okay.
But they actually took him to Mirkwood. Gollum. And he was imprisoned there. So Legolas had Gollum in prison there.
Oh.
But he escaped. And that's why Legolas went to Rivendell.
That's stupid.
To let them know that he escaped.
That's stupid.
Why?
How would Gollum escape?
Because he's Gollum. He escapes from everything. Literally everything.
But that just makes the elves look so weak and also slightly stupid.
I mean, they got drunk and let 13 dwarves leave.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think they'd learn their lesson, but apparently their prisons are not that great.
I mean, I do think that their prisons are that great. I do think that they're like that their guard are kind of like let their guard down.
Oh.
Because they're so well done. But also, Gollum didn't have the ring.
No.
And so how would he have gotten out?
Because he's a slimy little creature. I'm sure he figured a way.
Whatever.
It doesn't say how.
I'm gonna let it slide.
But so the whole point of that is that it actually shows it's bringing in like Tolkien's idea that like all of these people were here for different reasons. So like Legolas was there to say that Gollum escaped.
Is he going there to tell Gandalf, or is he going there to tell
I'm so bad with names today.
Hold on, give me a second. Arwen's daddy is Elrond.
Wow. I'm going to have to edit all of this or I'm going to look like an idiot.
No, don't edit it.
So
everybody falters.
So
because it's real.
Because it was real. So Legolas goes to let them know that Gollum's escaped.
Does everybody like report to Elrond in the Elven Kingdom?
No. That's just where they know to go because it's a center area. Gimli goes to see if anybody knows what happened to Balin. So
all of this shit magically happened at the exact time that the Fellowship of the Ring needed to happen?
Boromir went...
Does Manifest Destiny exist in this?
I mean, kind of. Boromir went because he had a dream. Him and Faramir had a dream about what was going... about the Bane, which was the ring.
Did they have the gift of foresight?
Faramir more so than Boromir.
Okay. I feel like you've mentioned this.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if there was anybody else. But basically, none of them knew that the ring was going to be there. Like, this council wasn't called. So, anyway, they get there. Legolas gets there because Gollum got loose, right? So that's the only reason why he's a part of the Fellowship. But it's the same thing as everybody else. Everybody else is just there by chance as well. So it's not like he's the only one. But, like... he's a Sindar elf, which is brought from the Teleri. So remember, there were 3 elves at the beginning: the Noldor, the Teleri, and the Vanyar.
Pretty hair.
Yeah,
and silver hair.
And so he was the one part of that family that stayed behind. In the movie, I like it because he's a little bit less of an arrogant dick.
Well, he's older.
That's true. And he's pretty arrogant in the book. like even at the part, so you remember the part where they're going over the mountain and the snow and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and he's on top of the snow and
Yeah.
everybody else is in there. He's more of an asshole in that part, where basically like they're asking for his help. He's like, "Nah, I'm out," and he just like runs down on top of the snow, and they have to like dig through with the hobbits on their back and stuff. He's just like,
So
"Nah."
like that doesn't really make any sense, but whatever.
He's light of foot.
Yes, that doesn't mean that your molecular structure changes, though.
Does when you're an elf.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I feel like maybe Peter Jackson in his mind wanted to always do The Hobbit and wanted to show the arrogancy of Legolas as a young man, but not necessarily as like an older elf, because I feel like everybody would have hated his character.
Yeah.
Like if he was as dickish as he was in The Hobbit in The Lord of the Rings, you'd be like, "Fuck this elf."
Right. And I like the character that they did, because I love, and this is from the book, which is funny because I for a long time thought that this was just like the like comedy part of movie writing, of Gimli and Legolas doing the whole counting of how many people they've killed.
Yeah.
No, that is absolutely in the book. And I love that Tolkien put that in, cuz it's just funny. Like it's even funny to read it. Like to read that they're
Right.
counting how many orcs they've killed.
Right. I mean, that makes more sense with like the arrogancy of Legolas being like, this dwarf is obviously not going to kill as many orcs as I am.
Right. But the whole, like, the beauty of the whole thing, and, like, this is kind of why Legolas and Gimli were in the Fellowship, is, as much as he could, Tolkien often wrote about there are always a separation of peoples, right? But you can get over that. Like, just because people are different doesn't mean that they can't be friends, type of a thing. And he puts that in all of his writing. But like one of the biggest like forms of that is Legolas and Gimli, and kind of the friendship and the bond that they create, because they essentially, like, after the Fellowship, after like everything breaks off, after they win, they're inseparable. Like they help rebuild Minas Tirith together. They go back to like the mines of Moria. They go to trying to remember some of the other places. They go back to Mirkwood.
Why would they go back to the mines of Moria?
So that he could actually like show him around, and it was all cleared out at this point. But like Gimli basically, like they wanted to show each other like their worlds, right? So he was just like, was that which Disney song just went into your head?
None of them. I just thought, oh, bromance.
Oh, but yeah. So they basically spent the rest of their lives together, and they lived in Ithilien, so the area where Faramir catches up to Gollum, Sam, and Frodo. That whole like tree and grassland area where they see the Oliphaunts for the first time.
You're saying a lot of words that are not bringing anything to mind. Faramir is Boromir's brother, where he first captures Frodo.
Where Sam and Frodo are sitting there, and he goes, "Oliphaunts, they'll never believe this back home." It's the big elephants.
Oh, elephants, Jesus.
He calls them Oliphaunts.
Okay, well, I did not remember that.
So, like, that whole area is Ithilien. So it's just outside of, like, Minas Tirith area. But it's a really pretty valley. Anyway, that's where, like, Legolas basically, like, creates another colony of elves there.
Oh, interesting.
So most of them leave Mirkwood area, and they come down to Ithilien. And Gimli stays there. And they both live there and help rebuild Minas Tirith.
Why do the elves come down there?
Because there's not really anything left for them up in Mirkwood. Everybody's getting ready to leave. The age of men is beginning. That's kind of the whole point,
okay.
right? So they beat Sauron, and now the age of men can continue on.
So they're basically like, I could stay here until we leave, or I could just go do something else until I leave.
Right.
Okay.
And so they end up down there, and when when Aragorn dies, they're like, we're done. Like, we don't need to be here anymore. The age of elf is like officially done.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as we know, Legolas is on the last boat. Like the last boat that goes from Middle Earth to Valinor. There are no more after that.
Does the boatman...
Círdan?
Does he, like, sail the last boat and then he's done too?
Mm-hmm.
So he just stays over there?
Yeah, so he, we've talked about this, but he stayed in Middle Earth longer than any other elf because he never left Middle Earth. So he was there from the very, very beginning, from the very first Sundering. And then he was there the entirety of, like, elves being in Middle Earth. And he was on the last boat with Gimli and Legolas. We're told that Gimli went. Like, it's not a for sure thing. We're told that Gimli went as well. And he's the only dwarf to ever go. And as we talked about, the only personage of Middle Earth to ever meet his creator.
Oh, yeah.
Because in Valinor, that's where Aule is.
Does the... Does the boatman...
Círdan.
Poor
guy.
Does Círdan have, like, a... I don't know. I can't think of any way to put it besides, like, a sixth sense for...
Who's there?
Yeah, like, knowing when all the elves are gone. Like, how would you know that you can finally be done?
Yeah, well, and I think he's got... I mean, it doesn't talk a lot about it, but you can, like, draw connections. I think he's got connections with, like, Valinor. Because he also knows, like, that when Gandalf comes over, when Olorin comes over as Gandalf, he knows that he's the one that he should give, like, the ring to.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he's, like, in the dark of all these things.
Okay.
And he's the shipwright. So, yeah, I think he knows when the last boat is, basically. So that's kind of the... it's funny because you talked about it, but that's a little bit of a misconception that they give in the movies.
What?
The whole idea of, like, she's got to leave now or she can't, you know, type of thing. Or, like, the elves have to leave now or they're never going to leave. It's like, that's not really what's happening. Like, the elves can continue to leave all the way up until they're all gone, basically.
Right. I don't think that it was, I mean, maybe that's the impression that most people got. The impression that I got was mostly that Elrond was trying to get her to leave when her people left.
Right, which still not a thing.
Right, but my idea of that was just that if he, like, in his mind, he thought, if I can't get her to leave with her people, she will never leave.
Right.
Like, right now is the time when I could maybe convince her to go.
Right. Yeah, I get that. But anyway, back to Legolas.
I feel like we haven't talked a lot about him.
He grabs his buddy, Gimli, his best bud, his bro, and they get on a boat and sail off to Valinor. And that's it. I mean, man, in reality, there's not a whole lot, like I said, that's written about him. Pretty much everything that we get, even, like, from the books, is just him and Gimli having a good time. I feel like we get more of a character development from the movies, like from The Hobbit into The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's what I was prepared to talk about.
And so in The Hobbit, he's the fun-loving or brawly asshole. And then in the
fun-loving was not a word I would use to describe him in that one. I
No?
would consider that in The Lord of the Rings.
Do you think he's a little more jolly in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's mostly an asshole in The Hobbit.
That's true. That's true. I do love him in The Hobbit, though, and I'm really glad that they put him in there, which is something that, you know, we talked about, but, like, I like that he's in there because he adds a little something, and it helps, like, tie everything together,
Mm-hmm.
which is a complaint of a lot of people, but fuck those people. I think it's good that they tied things together.
Are they also mad that Legolas's dad was in there?
No, because he's in the book.
Yeah, but not in great detail.
No, not in great detail. Doesn't even say his name.
So why wouldn't they be mad about him too?
Because he's in the book. Non-canonical.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about Legolas?
I have lots of questions about Legolas, such as like, what's his favorite food? What does he like to drink when he wakes up?
I don't think they have coffee. I don't think coffee's a thing.
Like for anybody?
No.
That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it kind of does.
No, it doesn't.
Sure it does.
Tea is just leaves of any kind soaked in water.
Right, they had tea, but not coffee.
I feel like they had coffee.
No. Like, especially if you're looking at it as a mythology, like, coffee wasn't in Europe at that time.
Are you talking about during the time of Middle-earth?
Yeah.
But...
Like, if you're looking at it like a mythology,
Uh-huh.
like, coffee didn't exist in, like, Europe until, like, the 1400s.
Yeah, but if you're going to create a mythology that explains all of humanity and coffee does eventually exist, you got to start the origin of it.
It's
It
not a
was in-
mythology
it
of all
was-
humanity.
It was in the garden.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
It was in Lorien?
Yes.
There's coffee in Lorien?
Yes, somebody brought it over. Somebody
like that.
stole those little coffee branches
Uh-huh.
and brought those little coffees.
Feanor, that little asshole, stole some coffee branches.
I like to think maybe it was one of his sons.
Mm. Okay.
Or...
Or Melian, when she came over, because she used to chill in Lorien a lot.
Yeah, sure, whatever. One of them brought over the coffee.
Melian was like, I'm going to go chill in Middle-earth, but I need these.
Are you kidding me? There's no way you could try coffee and just not...
And just, like, bounce from paradise that has it.
The idea, if it was anything like the good coffee that one can have, which I assume it is,
Uh-huh.
because it was from the garden,
Right.
there's no way you could live without it.
Okay.
So it had to have been brought over.
Elf coffee.
And while not all creatures may have partaken of the coffee,
Mm-hmm.
I like to think that Legolas did,
Okay.
at least in his youth.
Elven coffee. I feel like he needed it more and more as he got older, though, you know? A couple thousand years will really wear on you.
Yeah, I would agree, but I feel like it probably wouldn't have had much effect on the elves, considering that he had, 17 beers?
Yeah, their weirdly high metabolism that didn't get Legolas drunk, but apparently got the guards drunk.
Well, okay, so here's my theory about that, because I actually do have a theory about that.
Okay.
The wine that was made for the elves was made by the elves. For the elves.
So it's like 30%.
It's like 90%. And had a dwarf drinking it, they would have been, dead.
Yeah.
And then the beer was made for men.
Right.
So it's not doing a whole lot for him.
So it's just like table beer that's like 2% stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, this is my theory.
I like that. It's a
Yes.
good theory. So, as long as elves are making it themselves, they'll get fucked up. But if it's made by anybody else,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
I fully believe that.
It's kind of like Thor in Age of Ultron, when he's got the little flask of something, and he's like, "Oh no, this is for Asgardians,"
Yeah.
and he gives it to Stan Lee.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, I get that. All right, I'm down with that. They got to make their own party juice,
Mm.
so they make it strong.
Their own punch.
Yeah.
You haven't even talked about any of his conquests, how he was just the guy to take down anything.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I do love that in the movie he has a magic quiver that just never runs out of arrows.
I also like to imagine that he was just really good at knowing exactly how many arrows he needed to make for himself, because I also assume he made those.
Just all the time, he knew exactly how many to make.
The man can walk on snow.
Yeah, well, I do love. I mean, there are parts of it that I like where he's like, what's the best way to multi-using arrows.
3 at a time?
Well, not just that. Like, there'll be times where he's like, well, I need this arrow, but I'm going to stab the guy with it in front of me, and then I'm going to use it to shoot somebody else.
Dual purpose.
Yeah, yeah. So he's making use of the arrows that he has. He still has a magic quiver. It's never not full.
But also, maybe he's just grabbing arrows along the way that the orcs had made.
Yeah, I mean, he does that too. Like he'll you can. I think there's multiple parts in the movie where you see him like grab one out of somebody that's dead and then shoot it again. So, yes, but magic quiver. My favorite thing are his knives because I think his knives are super cool. I want those knives. I want them on my back. I think they're awesome. I really want those knives. Yeah. He doesn't carry a sword at all, which I think is a little interesting.
I think he does in The Hobbit.
No. Well, he carries Orc Crest for a little while because they took it from Thorin when they imprisoned him.
I do not remember this.
Yeah, because Orc Crest is like Thorin's blade that he got, the Gondolin blade. And he uses that in The Hobbit when he's fighting Brog, Azog's son.
I like that all of that rhymed.
Yeah. So he doesn't ever like carry a sword. In The Hobbit, it's fun watching him like brawl. I do enjoy that.
I mean, there's no way you could change it, and maybe nobody would want it to be changed, but I did really enjoy the distinct size difference that you got in The Hobbit, where elves did seem like these really giant kind of creatures that were like 7 feet tall always. That doesn't exist in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they really did kind of like, and I get it, like it's a little bit more difficult to do this, but like Peter Jackson definitely did kind of glance over the difference between men and elves because there is. Like, there's a significant difference between men and elves. There's supposed to be. Right? There are men in the first and second age that people talk about, like, being almost elf-like because they're, like, 7 feet tall. Galadriel is supposed to be, like, 7 feet tall.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't watched the extras, I highly recommend watching the elf extras, specifically with Cate Blanchett.
Yeah.
Because she wears, like, 7-inch platforms in order to be Galadriel, and she says that she doesn't really feel like the character unless she's wearing her crazy high platforms.
Yeah, I thought that was funny when she was like, yeah, they said we could do it in these shoes, but I just can't get into that character when I'm wearing them.
Also, the scenes in The Hobbit where Legolas is doing all of his stunts, or I guess Orlando Bloom is doing Legolas' stunts. It's kind of entertaining to watch because for one particular part where he's like jumping across the bridge, he did it perfect the first time, and then they're like, sweet, we can do this like 17 more times.
Yeah.
And they could never replicate it.
That happened a lot in The Hobbit because it was the same when they threw an egg at Bomber and Bomber catches it in his mouth.
Oh, that's right.
That was the very first shot, and then they did it like 25 more times, and it was all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like with stuff like that, the only magic that could make it happen is if they only tried it once, and then they're like, okay, we're not gonna do this again, which like would never happen in movie magic. Like, that just wouldn't happen. You obviously are shooting a scene and then you move on and you change the set.
Yeah.
But it would actually work if they let them sleep so that they could then replicate it
and try to do it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think, like, I love Legolas's character in both of the movies. I'm glad that they put him in The Hobbit.
Me too.
Because he's got that cut jawline.
Because of a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
He was my first love.
It is funny that Orlando Bloom is, I think, 2 years older
than his daddy.
Than the guy who plays his dad.
I really liked who they got to play his dad, though.
And I can never remember his name. I feel bad.
In real life?
Yeah.
I think the thing about elves for me is that they just are not very pretty in real life, and I love how pretty they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's not very pretty in real life, the guy that plays his dad.
Yeah. Well, that's why they... Remember, we talked about it. That's why they cast that one elf. The one that's talking with Elrond.
So if anybody has seen Flight of the Conchords, the guy that plays... I think his name is Jeb? I don't remember. Anyways, he plays one of the elves, and he's not pretty. Like, in real life, he's got, like, a really scraggly beard and, like, too big of eyebrows, and he could totally make a dwarf. and they were like, "You're too pretty. You have to be an elf." And I would have never, in, like, my wildest dreams, guessed that this man was cast as too pretty to be.
And they made him a very, very pretty elf.
Yeah, I mean, he was okay. The
He was-
brown-haired elves
I
don't do
know,
it as
he
much
was
for
dark
me.
hair, so
But he was also just kind of tiny.
that Noldor bloodline just doesn't do it for you.
They don't seem as big. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the illusion of having light hair that also makes you seem like larger. It's like
Yeah.
wearing a white shirt versus a black shirt. Black is slimming and white is not.
Well, and that's another thing that, like, Thranduil in The Hobbit looks like he's 7 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he looks big.
Yes, he does.
And it's kind of funny, even when he's fighting, like, because for some reason it seems like when they get closer and they're fighting and stuff, they don't look as large. But, like, even when he's fighting, like, he looks big.
I mean, it seems very purposeful because I think also part of that illusion is that they had him working with Evangeline Lilly,
Mm-hmm.
and she looks very big in that movie. I think because they're like she's so frequently cast with the dwarves,
Mm-hmm.
so she has this illusion of being a very large creature.
Yeah.
And then whenever she has scenes with him, he seems so much larger
Yeah,
than
he's
her.
like a foot taller than her.
Yeah, like I'm sure he was wearing 7-foot platforms as
Yeah.
well.
I mean,
that
he's
he
a
could be
super
taller
tall
than
dude. I
Orlando.
think he's like 6'5".
Yeah.
He's like, because he plays Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy. He's
Oh yeah.
the purple bad guy or
Yeah.
blue bad guy.
Yeah. I do love his voice though.
Yeah,
He has a really good voice.
yeah, he does in both of those movies.
He just has a great voice.
Yeah. But I think Orlando Bloom did a really good job with Legolas because I mean, let's be honest, like, all of the cast of the original trilogy did a
Mhm.
great job with their characters. But, like, Orlando Bloom, I think, did really well because he had, like, he battled really well, he moved really well, but then he
Mhm.
also had, like, really, really good chemistry the way that he's supposed to because of the book with Gimli.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of my favorite Legolas lines of the entire thing is, "Would you like me to describe it to you, or shall I fetch you a box?" And that's, like, one of my favorite, because it's very
think that
Legolas, but it's super playful.
Yeah, I think that like an unspoken characteristic of Legolas that I super love is that he's actually really sassy and
Yeah.
like very witty.
Yeah.
Because his banter with Gimli is very unique, but it really shows his actual character.
Yeah. And it's very unique for that story,
Mhm.
right? Because so many other people, like, yeah, they're funny here and there, but it's not that same sort of, like, witty, sassy banter.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it is pretty great.
Mhm.
I love, like, that part of him, and that it starts with him kind of being an asshole, and then it gets more and more playful
Mm-hmm.
throughout, which is fun.
Well, and I think that him being in The Hobbit also kind of prepped you to understand why he was able to have a soft spot for Gimli in the end, because he had dealt with dwarves before, and he ended up realizing that they're not so bad.
Right. I'm loving The Hobbit when he looks at Gloin's picture. What is this? Some goblin spawn? That's me wee lad, Gimli.
I can never remember which one is his dad. It's not the one that I want it to be.
He's not. He barely has any lines in it.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the one that's, like, hoarding the money when they're on the boat. He doesn't want to give Bard more money.
I only vaguely remember that.
Yeah, he's
So
at the dinner. He's like, he read the portents, and the portents say. Yeah,
I don't remember. So Gimli grew up in the mountain.
mm-hmm. In
Okay.
Erebor.
Okay.
Erebor.
Sorry.
Yeah. Or at least I think he did. Actually, I'm not sure. We need to do a whole thing on Gimli, because not all of them stayed in Erebor after they got it. And Oin and Gloin are from a different line. Like, technically they're from, like, Durin's line,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of like a break off.
I'd
type
ask
thing.
you more about that, but since this is about
we're talking about Legolas?
Yeah, we're not talking about dwarves right now.
But I think that was, like, the biggest tie that really came from it was this idea that, like, Legolas was there because obviously they needed like a badass warrior elf and all of that stuff, like in both the movie and in like the literature. Legolas existed because of that, but he also existed because they needed to show that there were these two races that basically hated each other,
Mm-hmm.
and then grew so close together that they essentially died together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because, especially reading The Fellowship, at the beginning of The Fellowship, you're like, this elf sucks. Like, he's an ass. Um, Not like Gimli is a great character either, right? He's kind of an asshole too because he's a dwarf and that's what they do.
Yeah.
But as they grow together, you're like, oh, Legolas is actually really great. And he like shows more and more compassion both to men and to dwarves over time, which is really cool.
But also until like the Fellowship of the Ring, his only interaction with like men or dwarves would have been the Hobbit.
Right.
And like that's not really in the book. So the assumption is that he's never had to deal with these two things that he's assumed to hate.
Right. And that's, I mean, like we're talking about the history of him, right? That kind of goes into the whole idea that it's because his dad was an isolationist, basically.
Mm-hmm.
His dad was like, no, like we stay in Mirkwood. Anything that happens in our borders, we'll deal with in our borders. But anything outside of that doesn't matter. It's not a part of our world.
Yeah.
You're a part of this world, aren't you? Anyway.
Yeah. I do think that even though I love Tauriel, her or Legolas could have flown solo in The Hobbit.
Right.
I did think it was...
Right, and that was something that, like, Carlos and I talked about with our Hobbit review, is this idea that, like, they didn't need to have a love triangle.
Yeah.
Like, you could have even had them both, but just had them be friends.
Right, I mean, I even talked to you about how I didn't really... Like, it's just so cliche. It's just so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it was so unnecessary to have her dad dislike her because he knew that Legolas liked her.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what?
Like, his whole, like, you're a great captain of the guard, but, like, don't let my son fall in love with you type of thing.
Yeah, like he was already a dick. We didn't need to have him be more of a dick because he didn't want Legolas to be with Tauriel. Especially because, like, he doesn't need a wife to be king of whatever... I don't know, whatever
Mirkwood.
they are. Yeah, like he doesn't...
The Green Elves.
Yeah, like he just doesn't need a wife and he never seems to get a wife and what's his name doesn't have a wife by the time you meet him.
Right. Actually, that's really funny. I'm just thinking back about it and it's like Legolas never gets married. Not that we know of. Gimli doesn't get married that we know of. Frodo, Bilbo never get married.
None of them get married except for Aragorn.
And Sam.
And Sam.
Actually, all of the hobbits except for Frodo.
Well, it makes sense.
Because Merry and Pippin have kids.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a lot of bachelors in Tolkien's Legendarium.
I mean, I just don't think that like the whole that was my only faux pas about like the two of them being there is that I was like, hey, either of them could have like done this movie by themselves without the other one being there. Legolas could have chosen to go because he felt like he needed to, or Tauriel could have done the same thing without the other one, or having them both be in there. It was just so unnecessary for it to be a love triangle type of thing.
Right. They could have just been elves helping.
Right. Or like, I mean, sure, she can fall in love with what's his name, the dwarf,
Killy.
But at the same time, I'm like, why does it always have to be love that's driving him, and why can't they just be decent beings?
Right. You almost said human beings, huh?
No, I was going to say elf beings, but then I just thought...
I like that,
I keep on calling them creatures, so I was trying to find a different word.
Creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think that, like, I love Legolas's part, and I love Tauriel's part, but it was dumb that it was, like... this unrequited love.
Yeah, I felt like even in their story, it would have made more sense for them to have been best friends.
Yeah.
I feel like as a person, if like somebody that I was romantically involved with went and did something stupid, I'd be like, why would you do that? Now I'm more angry at you.
Right.
As opposed to like your best friend wanting to do something and you'd be like, well, yeah, like I'll totally support
Guess
you
I'm
and
on my
follow
way.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it didn't seem like their relationship was romantic in any way. It did seem like they were good friends.
Yeah.
And so it would be more convincing to me that he just followed his best friend because she thought that was what was best.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always this every time she makes a decision because of the dwarves, he has this pining look in his eyes.
Yeah, because also if you're an arrogant asshole, like, why would you even care?
Yeah.
That part didn't make sense to me. I feel like Peter Jackson has this, like, I feel like he thought that maybe there wasn't enough romance in any of the movies, and so he needed to add some of it, which
Right.
it just was so unnecessary. Like, nobody that's watching these movies is like, I want more romance.
Right.
And most people that are watching it are men.
And that's the thing is with The Hobbit especially, like the book The Hobbit, it's a bro fest.
Right.
Right. It's just guys. So it's good that they put Tariel in there, but they didn't have to do it the way that they did.
Right.
They could have done it in a way like we've talked about where she goes and saves them because she knows it's right. And
Right.
Legolas follows her because it's his friend that he also is learning, right? He could be learning from her that like just because they're dwarves doesn't mean you shouldn't do the right thing.
Right. And I don't even care that her love interest with
Killy
is what drives her. Like, sure, but I also just think that I don't know. I don't think that Taria would have been stupid enough to follow somebody just because she had a really great flirting session with him. Like, that's
talking about a rock.
Yeah, like that's just not really a thing that happens for somebody that's like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years old. For you
Right.
to be so swooned by this one flirting encounter that you're like, I'm gonna leave everything I know for this and like
Yeah.
totally abolish my duties. It would make more sense for her to do it because she felt like it was the right thing to do.
Right, which that's the thing is like they put that in there, but it was almost like a side note because she talks to Thranduil
Yeah.
and says like this whole idea of like, we have to be bigger than our own kingdom type of thing. And he just says no about it. And she could have just had that and held on to that piece and like been that person, but instead it was I fell in love with a dwarf because he listened to me talking about walking in starlight. But
yeah,
that also has little to do with Legolas.
that also does have, but I mean, it makes more sense.
Yeah. Any other questions about Legolas? About the elf that won your heart as a child?
Let's be real. He won my heart at all ages.
As one does.
It's like Charlize Theron for you. There will be no point in which she is not still attractive.
It's true.
There's always somebody.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a fictional being that I could never be with because he doesn't exist.
With long blonde hair.
With long blonde hair. Though his daddy's is much longer.
It's true.
I'd like to braid that hair. No, I don't think I have any more questions because I mean with Galadriel, I think it's easier to ask questions when I'm like, I would be Galadriel if I was in this, but I just enjoy Legolas's character.
Right. Cool. All right, we'll wrap it up. Remember to follow us on Instagram at the Swolhirrim, on YouTube. Check out Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all with the Swolhirrim. I said it right that time.
Swolhirrim.
The Swolhirrim. We are Swole and Rohirrim. The Swolhirrim. All right, guys. Bye.